Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Good, thanks, Bede. And yourself?
Good, thanks.
What are we talking about today?
Now, what I want to go over is an extremely. I want to kind of go over what we're doing when we study Vedanta. Like, what does Vedanta actually produce? What are we doing when we talk about Vedanta as a means of knowledge, as an instrument in which it enables me to come to know? I want to go. I want to go on into about that.
Mm-hmm. Good.
Now, Swami Dayananda, you see, this is the thing. Our whole psychological life is a striving away from ourself towards something that's other than ourself, to try and become more secure and more happy.
I think that's probably a good summary of the situation.
This is the dynamism of our psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of our psychology, we have the basis of our human psychology, according to Swami Dayananda, is tremendous insecurity and psychological misery in the form of self-dissatisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
And out of this insecurity and self-dissatisfaction, there is a striving to do something about it through either acquiring an object or getting rid of an object.
Mm-hmm.
And this is our whole psychology.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the very interesting thing about the study of Vedanta is there is a shift from this striving to get something,
Mm-hmm.
or to have something, or to do something to get something.
So that I feel more secure, and I feel, and I lose temporarily my self-dissatisfaction.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this constant movement. So there's a shift from that to simply the recognition and appreciation of what is.
Mm.
Now, this is a vastly different thing. Now, it's very important to understand, because some people have the idea that that one day with Vedanta, one day I'm going to get something, enlightenment, moksha. I'm going to arrive at something. I'm going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual fact, in Vedanta, what we're looking at is coming to right here, right now, as we are in our life, right here, right now, a recognition of what is,
mm-hmm.
and hence being able to abide in the appreciation of what is recognized while we're living.
Mm-hmm.
And when I use the word living, I mean the process. When I'm looking, that's an act of living. When I'm listening, that's an act of living. When I'm talking to you, it's functioning, isn't it?
So it's relating to the world.
Activity, yes.
Yeah.
So what we're looking at is that we want to be able to, so we're shifting from this constant striving to get something in order to make us feel happy and secure, to a shift where we're just simply going to, right here, right now, as we are, recognize what is,
Mm-hmm.
and abide in that recognition while living. And the other thing too is that this recognition is a special kind of recognition.
Mm.
When we see what is, or see the meaning, is what Swami Dayananda says, or its knowledge, is that when we are seeing in the way that Swami Dayananda means it, we become transformed as individuals.
Mm.
So it's not, we don't receive and have a notion in our head. Yeah. We come to a recognition. Now,
to see what Swami Dayananda says, we have to suspend our notions, our judgments, our conclusions, so we're not seeing through them. We're actually hearing and seeing the meaning of what Swami Dayananda means.
When we suspend the notions, we have a possibility to come to a recognition of what is. Otherwise, we're filled up with our stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff that has been built into us culturally, historically, our social circumstances, our interpersonal history, our prejudices, all of that. We're full of that.
And the meaning we have to our experiences in life.
We're always, every experience we have is we're looking at a meaning. Yes. Now he makes it an extremely interesting statement. He says, you can only see what you know.
That sounds sort of obvious.
Yeah, and I want to explain that a little bit, okay? And by using an example. You see, we can have the experience of someone upsetting us or hurting us. Would that be true?
Yes.
So we have the experience that the meaning of that experience, someone's done something we don't like, and we're now experiencing being a victim of what they've done.
Yeah.
And we feel that they are hurting us.
And we blame them for that. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, because what happens is the meaning for that experience, the meaning that we are seeing is this: they have hurt us.
Yeah.
You see, what happens is a person does something we don't like or agree with. Agreed?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's factual and it's objective. But what happens is that the meaning that we are giving that experience, the way we see it, is that we're seeing it. They are annoying me. They are making me angry. They are hurting me.
They're making you unhappy.
They're making me unhappy. Basically, the location of my unhappiness and the cause of it exists over there with them. Now, that's a meaning.
Yeah.
Now, like what we were talking about yesterday, the last time we were talking, that meaning is a form of blindness. It's the difference between it seems to be.
Yeah.
It's an apparency. Now, but according to Swami Dayananda and what he reveals, his teaching reveals, is that this dynamism that I have in me that motivates all my acts, that determines the way I live in the world, this insecurity and self-dissatisfaction, the psychological misery.
Yeah.
What happened was someone did something or said something I don't like, and suddenly this insecurity and self-dissatisfaction centered on myself suddenly is revealed in all its glory. So that the person is only instrumental in revealing that.
Now that I don't normally see that. I find that too painful, and I blame the other person for me feeling unbearably self-dissatisfied.
That's right. Because we see it our way. Now, through the grace of the teaching, what we do is we see quite clearly that my problem exists with me.
Yeah.
So what happens is, so here's this ordinary human experience, someone doing something we don't like or agree with.
Yeah.
And what happens is we actually completely clearly see that they are not hurting me. I am being hurt.
Yeah.
Now that is seeing my experience in the light of the teaching.
Yeah.
That's seeing my experience in the light of the teaching. Now, and because I've recognized, because I've come to a knowledge, a recognition
Yeah.
People and events don't hurt me. They're only instrumental in revealing a pain and suffering that already exists.
Mm-hmm.
I can now see the experience in that way.
Mm-hmm.
But if I don't, you see, so what he says, we can only see what we know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the recognition of this fact, see, for Swami Dayananda, knowledge means seeing what is, the recognition of what is. Once this and what Vedanta produces is this recognition. And then because I recognize it, I can see it. So because if this recognition isn't there, that people and things don't hurt me, they only reveal an dissatisfaction that exists in me as me. If I don't recognize that, can I see my experience in this light?
I don't think it's possible.
It's absolutely not possible.
Because the experience you're talking about, if someone does something I don't like, I still may have the thought, I don't like it.
Yes, that's a fact.
That's a fact. That's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But where I start, I have that same thought, and then my self-identity and the thinking becomes confused, and I start suffering, saying they've hurt me. I feel miserable. They're doing this to me. Why are they doing?
All of those are meanings.
Yeah, all those are meanings.
Subjective meanings.
Where my thinking and my self-identity are confused, and I'm being an unhappy or upset or hurt person.
Yeah.
That's quite different from. It's very different from having a thought where but I
don't want to go right now, Kevin. What I want to stick with is this: is that I can't. What happens is I cannot see what I don't know.
Yeah.
If I do not know that people and things don't hurt me, they're only instrumental in revealing a sense of insecurity and self-dissatisfaction centered on me. If I don't know that, I cannot see that. I can't abide in the appreciation of that fact.
Yeah.
So that when my wife does something that I says is something or does something I don't like, what happens is I do not see the meaning of that experience. I'm not looking at that experience in the right light. Well, I will look at it in terms of what I've been brought up with or what it appears to be. So what Vedanta does is it frees you from what seems to be and reveals to you what really is. So it's a means of knowledge. It's a means. What happens is that what Swami Dayananda would do is he would unfold the meaning of our experience so that we could see that meaning clearly. And in seeing that meaning clearly, we would change as an individual. Now, just to explain that, when I'm seeing my partner or another person as the cause of my unhappiness, I cannot help but be blaming. That be true?
I think that's true. Yep.
But when I'm seeing quite factually, the meaning of this experience is the fact that this insecurity and psychological misery centered on myself, what happens is I cease to blame. I'm freed from enmity. If I, in actual fact, see my experience in this way, I am free from blaming, and I'm free from the feeling of enmity and thinking that person has made me unhappy. So we're clear on this so far?
Yeah.
So now, Swami Dayananda gives an example of a doctor who knows all about the body. A doctor will look at a body and a person's illness and will see a lot more than I can see. Because you can only see what you know. Now, But in Vedanta, we don't deal with the body as such. We deal with the meaning of three things. That's all.
Yeah.
What does God mean?
Mm-hmm.
To be able to see that the whole point of Vedanta is to actually reveal, bring about a recognition of what God is.
Mm-hmm.
A recognition of what we are,
Mm-hmm.
and a recognition of what the world is.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you might say, well, yeah, but why? What's the purpose? Now, it all boils back to this point. As a human being, I'm suffering from a fundamental self-dissatisfaction, a psychological misery centered on myself, and an insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed?
Yeah.
The special character of this recognition that comes about through Vedanta,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to be able to live this recognition, to abide in the appreciation of it while living,
Yeah.
is that we are freed from this fundamental problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's not a release from this fundamental problem, we haven't actually seen the meaning.
Yeah.
So when Swami Dayananda, when he says that, we can only see what we know,
Yeah.
it is not a knowledge, a theoretical idea.
Mm-hmm.
It is a way of seeing in which we become free of our psychological misery and insecurity centered on ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So is that clear so far?
Yeah.
So it's not, so if there is not the resolution or the relative resolution of this insecurity and psychological misery,
Mm-hmm.
we are not knowing in the sense that Swami Dayananda means. Okay?
Yeah.
It's very important, this.
Yeah.
Because we can think we know all sorts of things. But the fact of the matter is, when I am being any form of suffering,
Mm-hmm.
I am not, in the light of the teaching, I am not seeing the situation in the right way. I am suffering from ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
All right?
Yeah, I think I know where we're going with this, and
Sorry?
you really can't understand the teaching without being objective. What Swami Dayananda means is being objective.
Yeah, and you can't be objective unless you know the meaning of what does it mean to be objective, because you can only see what you know.
Yeah.
Okay? It's an extraordinary thing.
Yes.
Now, some people in spiritual life, they have this dichotomy between, they say it's either theoretical or it's experiential.
Mm.
And some people really love this experiential thing. I've just got to feel it, I've got to have an experience where I will be happy and all of that stuff. Do you know what I mean? The solution is going to be an experience that I can have.
Well, they say they have an intellectual knowledge, but it's not assimilated yet.
Yeah, well, they say that, yes.
Yes.
Yes, I've got the theory, now I've got to put it into practice.
Mm.
And other people say, well, forget that. And they think that by having clear ideas about Vedanta or spiritual life, that's the trick.
Mm. Mm.
Now, what Swami Dayananda means by seeing the meaning, it is not a conceptual structure of ideas that you have,
Mm.
and it's not an experiencing that you have.
Mm.
You see, he says that experience is dumb.
Yeah.
You see, what happens is it's being able to see the meaning of the experience in the right light.
Mm. Mm.
So when my wife says something to me I don't like or disagree with, and I suddenly find myself being annoyed,
Mm-hmm.
That is an experience I'm having. Is that true?
Yeah.
I need to see that experience in the right light in order to be able to resolve it.
Mm.
But if I think that the experience is being caused by my partner, then I'm going to try and change them.
Yeah.
And I'm completely oblivious and blind to the fact of this fundamental insecurity and self-dissatisfaction centered on myself. So when we're talking about Vedanta and we're talking about Swami Dayananda's teaching, the whole purpose of his teaching is to be a light in which we can see our life in a clear and undistorted way. But not only that, to see our life in such a way that we are freed from this fundamental self-dissatisfaction and insecurity centered on ourselves. This is the central game. This is what makes Vedanta valuable. Nothing else.
So seeing our life in the light of Vedanta teaching.
Yes, we do not study Vedanta. We study our life in the light of Vedanta.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I want to go into this even more. Now, in the English language, we have two words. One's called implicit and one is called explicit.
Yeah.
Now, in Latin, implicit means it's there, it's folded in. It exists, it's folded in, but you can't see it.
Yeah.
When you make something explicit, you unfold it. It's unfolding. X means out. So what's hidden, you reveal.
Yeah.
So when people use the word implications, they're talking about the meanings that are implied in things. Okay? Yeah. So again, it's to do with meaning. Okay? Now, in the West, we have a subject called hermeneutics. Sounds a real intellectually, high-flying word, but what it was a method to study scripture, to discover the meanings that exist within the scriptures. Okay, so what happens with, in theology or in biblical studies, we look, what does this mean? What does this text mean? And then the methodology of hermeneutics was to try and unfold the meaning and make it clear. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Some Western scholars have done this with Hinduism. But what they're doing is they're not actually unfolding the meaning that's there. They're just putting a meaning onto it. Okay, but we won't go into that. But so that's hermeneutics, but that's trying to understand the religious text, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, what Swami Dayananda did, instead of trying to reveal the meanings in the spiritual texts, like the Bhagavad Gita, right?
Yeah.
What he would do would be he would use the scripture to reveal the meaning that exists in our life.
In our everyday experiences.
Sorry?
In our everyday experiences.
Yes. So what he would reveal was, the implicit meaning. So he would actually, in one sense, if we were to look at it from a Western point of view, he employed existential hermeneutics. He would get us to look at our experience in the light of the teaching so that we could come to a recognition of the meaning of that experience, which would free us from all our particular personal meanings of it.
Yeah, yeah.
But again, the importance is this. When you are seeing the world, God, and other people, and yourself in the right light, you are freed from psychological misery and insecurity. If you are not right here, right now, as you are, freed from psychological misery and insecurity,
Mm-hmm.
the meaning of that experience is that you are not seeing.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a big statement.
Well, this is see the whole point. When we look at the psychological transformation of the individual, at any one moment I'm in an attitude, aren't I?
Yeah.
Now, what I mean by an attitude, I was very, very interested in what an attitude meant. And I knew that I wasn't really understanding it, and I couldn't wait to get in front of him and ask him, what do you mean by attitude?
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the West, we tend to think of an attitude as something that we have or do.
Mm-hmm.
But what his understanding is, Swami Dayananda's understanding, is an attitude is something we are being. It involves all of us. Now, to give you an example, if I'm angry at you, I'm being the anger. Every little fiber of my being is pervaded by this attitude of anger. I've got a tone of voice. Do you know what I mean? I've got thoughts that go with this attitude. Kevin's a nasty, horrible person, and I hope that he's damned forever. Do you know what I mean? I'm angry. I'm tense here like this, and I have an urge to act it out, don't I?
Yeah.
So when we're in an attitude,
and you feel very right about it.
Completely right about it. But the interesting thing about an attitude is this. You know, remember the snake and the rope analogy?
Yeah.
When we're seeing the snake, that way of seeing becomes embodied in a way of being. I'm an afraid person. Agreed?
Yeah.
So the way I see is the way I be. So it's not like I see and then I be. I am being my way of seeing.
Yes, very much like that.
Okay?
Yeah.
And this is true for me every moment of my life. Right here, right now, as I am now in an attitude. Can't help it. It might be bored, it might be mildly interested. It doesn't matter. It's an attitude. Now, what the vision of Vedanta does, when you are seeing, and this is why it's so important. You see, we're only dealing with three topics. What does it mean to be me? What is the world? What does that mean? What is this world that we're looking at? And what is God? Now, the very interesting thing is that when you come to an understanding of what is God, you come to an entirely different understanding of what you are and what the world is. This is what's so unique about Swami Dayananda's teaching. You see, so what we're looking at is he unfolds the meaning. What does it mean? What does God mean? What do we mean by God? What is God? And what he would do is he would simply unfold that meaning until you could recognize what that meaning as it exists in your life right here, right now, as you are. And then you could abide in the appreciation of it. You could see. So in other words, once you recognize what God is, you can see God. And in the recognition of what God is, there is a transformation of attitude. That's total. And he referred to this as being relaxed in the lap of Ishvara. Or more formally, he talked about it, being gracefully accepting. It's not an attitude you do.
It's born of understanding, of seeing what God is.
Born of the understanding of your appreciation of seeing God, of appreciating what God is right here, right now, as I am. Whenever I'm appreciating the presence of God
mm,
in the way that Swami Dayananda understood it, I cannot help but be relaxed in myself as myself.
mm, mm,
It's a different kind. It's not a theoretical thing.
mm. Not a belief.
It's not a belief.
Mm,
Now, I want to just use another word, and it's a Western word, but it's quite a useful word. Existential. Now, it sounds like a really complicated philosophical word, right?
mm,
But what it means is that when we say existential, we just simply say our existence, what we are being in the world.
how we're living in the world.
How we are being in the world, yeah.
How we're being in
How
the
we're existing in the world.
mm, mm,
So when we talk about an existential knowledge, we're talking about a knowledge that transforms our existing in the world.
the way we're being in the world.
Yeah, so it's an existential knowledge.
Mm, mm,
So we can say that this knowledge that Swami Dayananda unfolds
mm,
is a knowledge which transforms us as an individual. So it's an existential knowledge.
yeah.
It's not, if you see, I can be upset and angry with you, but still have a very strong belief in God.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I might be thinking you're an unbeliever, so you're no good.
Mm, mm,
So I'm being hateful while I've got this belief in God.
mm, mm.
But his understanding of God was nothing like that,
No.
in the sense that when you understand what the meaning, what is God, and he revealed a meaning, and his whole thing was see the meaning. This is this recognition.
Mm, mm,
Without the recognition, you can't see.
no.
And so when you understand what God is, in the sense that Swami Dayananda means it, you can then see what God is. And you can abide in the appreciation of the presence of God. And in that abiding of the appreciation, you are different. You are freed from, relatively speaking, insecurity and self-dissatisfaction or psychological misery.
Yeah. Me as a wanter disappears.
Now, that's exactly right.
Me as a struggler disappears.
Absolutely, yes. So it's extremely important that when we're talking about Vedanta, and particularly we're talking about, my interest is in the yoga of objectivity, which the yoga of objectivity, the basis of the yoga of objectivity is the understanding of what God is.
And that's the basis of karma yoga as well, what God is.
Of course, yeah. It's for Swami Dayananda, it's the basis of everything, actually. So
the basis of objectivity is born of the understanding of what God is.
Yes, well, I don't want to go into that. Can we just stick to the thing of the thing is that the whole basis is that to see and to understand what God means right here, right now, as I am, is to be transformed as a person, as an individual.
Yeah.
Okay. If the transformation is not present, we have not understood.
Yeah.
In the sense that Swami Dayananda means it.
That's true.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're not looking at it rightly. And he said that there are two things necessary in Vedanta. Is first of all the wisdom, which is this recognition, this knowledge, the seeing what is.
Yeah.
And then living the wisdom. Living the wisdom. Because you can't, if you don't live the wisdom, it has no use.
No.
Okay?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about, in order to understand him, he was not trying to, see, the wonderful thing for a Westerner like me is that Swami Dayananda's mind was not dominated by religious dogmatism. And therefore, he had no desire to change my thinking religiously. All he did was, his whole interest with me was to unfold meanings that I could see in my life, so that I could see my life in a clear and undistorted way. And the thing was that the great thing about Vedanta for us Western people, Vedanta as unfolded by Swami Dayananda, is that we can come as we are. He didn't suffer from cultural chauvinism. He didn't feel superior to us as a Westerner. Well, he was just a beautiful human being who saw me as a human being. And his whole interest was to help me see my life in a clear and undistorted way, so that I would be freed from my psychological suffering and insecurity.
Yeah.
That's his sole interest. So what Vedanta is, in the light of Swami Dayananda's teaching, is a means of knowledge. It produces a recognition of what is, first of all.
Yeah.
This recognition brings about a change in me as an individual, and I can abide in this recognition while I'm living.
Yeah.
Are we clear?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's extremely, this is extremely important to understand, because the thing is that when we read his books or whatever, what he's doing is he's not presenting a philosophy. He's not presenting a theory. He's not presenting Hindu theology. What he's doing is simply, he himself was a light. He would use words to convey a meaning, to open up a meaning that exists in your life that you can clearly see. And in the appreciation of that seeing, we would change. Because, and the other thing too is that once you've recognized it, you might forget the recognition, but then when you remember, you can abide in that recognition again. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can shift into it. Because there's a process. You see, first of all, there's a recognition of what is. But that recognition lands in a mind full of other stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Contrary notions. So what the method is that you first of all recognize what is, but then you've got some mental hindrances, intellectual ideas that go against it or are added to it or that confuse it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not, so even though you've recognized what is, you don't yet clearly see it.
Yeah.
So you need to resolve those doubts or inhibiting factors so that this understanding can exist in you in a clear and stable way. So you recognize, and then what you do is you reflect and you dwell on this recognition, and you talk to the teacher and you clarify it until this recognition is a doubt-free recognition. I see, but I'm seeing clearly. There's no inhibiting factors.
Yeah.
Now, my teacher, Atmaprakashananda, says all a teacher can do is bring about the recognition and clean up your doubts.
Yeah.
But they can't live this wisdom. So you then have to live this wisdom until it's unforgettable, assimilated.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I can get annoyed with my wife, so I can forget. I can forget the vision.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, oh! So it's only by living the wisdom does it become part of us. Does that make sense? So you've got these three phases of the recognition, then the reflection on it and cleaning up all your doubts and confusions about it until it's totally clear. And then you have to live this wisdom until it's a part of it. It becomes unforgettable.
Yeah.
You were going to say something?
Like we have talked about what is God in an earlier talk, but and I understand that with just focusing on, and this here is that recognition of what is God in accordance with what Swami Dayananda how he unfolds it. There won't be a psychological transformation, will there?
Well, you won't be able to. In order to see God, you have to know God. See, he says that in order to know, you can't see what you don't know. Now, if you want to be able to become aware of the presence of God right here, right now, as we are, you cannot do this without having understood and recognized what God is.
Yeah.
So, today's conversation, I want to emphasize this fact that the only thing that frees us from the blindness that we're caught in is knowledge. That Vedanta is not something we kind of use our thinking and our doing in order to produce a better life.
And it's not like studying chemistry or physics or mathematics as an external sub-volume of topics, or it's seen as Vedanta is seen as a means of knowledge in which to, as a light, and to see the meaning of my life, meaning of my experiences.
Particularly the meaning of my experiences. We're having experiences all the time. We're having experiences of ourself. We're having, see, Swami Dayananda would unfold the meaning of what does it mean to be lonely? What does it mean to be angry? What does it mean to be sad? Do you know what I mean? What does it mean when we're in conflict with other people? What does it mean to be free? What does it mean to be peaceful? These are things that we need to be very clear on.
Yeah.
And the thing is that because if we don't see the meaning, if the recognition doesn't happen, if we don't know, we can't see. We can only see what we know.
Yeah.
So we're completely blind. We're caught up in our own world. And the thing is that, you know, this is rather, that's not very good for the ego, but we don't really know what God is. Before Vedanta, we don't know what God is. We don't know what the world is, and we don't know what we are.
No.
So we're blind to those. We're blind to that. Now, the whole point is that without, you see, some people think, okay, if I meditate and I do these things, I'm going to bring about a state of mind in which I'm going to be able to see life. That's not true. If I do certain actions and then my mind gets calmer, I still am not seeing the meaning. I'm having an experience of a calm mind that I call, you know, I'd say, oh yes, I'm very spiritual because my mind's all nice and calm. That's fine, but this is not Vedanta. Experience is dumb.
Yeah.
We need, what happens with Vedanta is that with the faculty of understanding, we see, we have a recognition.
We'll still have answers to those questions: what I am, what the world is, and what God is. But
no, we don't actually have answers to that. No. You see, when we look at inquiry, we've got our own answers to that in the forms of conclusions.
Yes.
You see, when Swami Dayananda asked the question, like, what is God? It's not asked as a rhetorical question. Because then you go, oh, God is the cause of the universe and material and intelligent cause of the universe. That is an intellectual answer. It's the answer of a rhetorical question, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's a conclusion.
Yeah.
What he says, the question, what is God? What happens is that this is an inquiry which results in a recognition of what God is, which is not an intellectual conclusion, is it?
No.
And so people have all sorts of notions about what God is, what the world is, and we're full of notions about what God is, what the world is, and what we are.
That's what I meant by, like, even without Vedanta, we have conclusions or notions about what God is, what we are, what the world is.
Everyone has their own answer to those three basic questions.
And you could even say this. I don't know if it's the right expression. What the secular religion might say, well, which is implied in a typical Western culture is, well, firstly, God doesn't exist. I'm just
Yes.
a biological entity that dies.
Yes.
And the world is a place that sucks.
Yes. Everybody has come to the answers to these questions.
Mm.
And the answers they've come to, first of all, their whole life actually is a dramatization of that answer.
Mm. Yeah, so no one moves away from it. Even
No.
in secular society,
Yeah.
The notions that we hold on those three topics,
Yep.
is actively played out.
Completely. And that's why with this beautiful teaching, it is a revelation through knowledge, a recognition of what God is, what the world is, and what I am.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not an intellectual or philosophical thing, because remember what we said: the way we see is the way we be.
It's a big thing to say when there's a psychological transformation, and even in lay experience we can have sort of where a joke is told, or we see a beautiful mountain or valley or sunrise, sunset, where we find ourselves relaxed and not, the struggle or wantonness disappears momentarily. There's not knowledge here, but there's where you don't need anything to be any different to what it is. You're appreciating, accepting what is in that, but there's not a knowledge of Vedanta and what we're describing, but it's a transform, and it happens despite desires not being fulfilled.
It's not transformation through knowledge.
No.
See, what happens is we have that experience, which is very good, because it gives us a benchmark, but we don't know what that means.
No.
Now, so it's not of any use to us. It's accidental.
Yeah.
So what happens is that when we look at that experience in the light of Vedanta, we see, when my mind is full of the presence of what is, I disappear as a suffering, struggling individual. Now, this is the meaning that is revealed through Vedanta.
Yes.
Whereas before, it happens accidentally.
Yes.
But it is those moments where we experience ourselves as free, as different, are very, very important. Because, but what happens is only knowledge reveals their meaning. And then it becomes useful.
And then it's available, because when you recognize what is, you can abide in it.
Yeah, once you know that the only way, that the basis of our psychological transformation is by being filled with the presence of God, as he is appearing in the form of trees, people, cars, imagining, whatever form he's appearing.
And the order that all of that involves, psychological.
All of that, yes.
Yeah.
Once we understand that, all the appearances are always functioning according to the order. But once we understand that the presence of the given is the presence of the giver, and we're actually abiding, we're seeing life that way because we know we can see.
Yeah.
We change as an individual. But the basis of that is knowledge. Without that knowledge, this is why the understanding of God, as unfolded by Swami Dayananda, is the starting point of Vedanta.
Yeah.
Without this, we cannot understand life in the right way. We can't understand the world. We can't understand God. We can't understand ourselves.
Well, there won't be objectivity. You'll still be full of your own notions, your subjectivity of your own notions, conclusions.
Yes, the subjective individual can't get rid of himself because he's subjective. The only thing we can do about ourselves as a subject individual is to disappear as a subject individual. And this is the point that we've made before. The transformative factor for a human being is the presence of God appreciated. And this is what lifts us out of all of these notions. We can't, you know, all my life I've had struggled with myself, trying to change myself, trying to change my thoughts and all of this stuff. But first of all, you see, there was in the Christian tradition, there's a beautiful phrase that's attributed to Christ, and it says, "I of mine own self can do nothing. The Father within me doeth the work." Now, it took me to meet this remarkable Hindu monk to understand what that means. You see, we cannot lift ourselves out of ourselves because ourselves is the problem. We are the problem. What happens is that when we come to a recognition of what God is, which is the presence of God in the form of the given, when that presence comes into our life and takes up all the room in our mind, we are lifted out of our subjectivity without any thought or action on our part. But again, this transformation is not possible without understanding what God is. What does it mean what is the meaning? Is to see the meaning. And Swami Dayananda, this whole thing, the doorway is seeing the meaning. Because if you can only see what you know. Okay, so like what we said at the beginning, first of all, we come to a recognition of what is, and then we live that recognition, that's the wisdom, by abiding in the appreciation of what we've recognized while living. And I just wanted to clarify that before we went on further. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.